Good evening. This is John Bailey, and this is People to Be Heard, the program where people who have something to say have their say. And tonight, you've got the new superintendent of schools for White Plains City School District, USA, Dr. Paul Freed. Welcome to the program, Dr. Freed.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, well, thank you for coming on the air. So, anyway, Dr. Freed comes to White Plains from Montville's school district, where he was a superintendent for 5 years. Right?
5 years.
5 years, and prior to that, he was superintendent of schools for the Mamaroneck School District, one of the top school districts in the county, at the time, under your stewardship. And prior to that, you were with Ossining.
Yes, for 19 years.
Yes, 19 years.
19
so
years.
You're very familiar with our type of population mix.
Absolutely.
Here in White Plains. But anyway, you've had about 5 months to analyze the situation here in the White Plains School District as it is going forward. What is your assessment of where the school district is now? Strengths, weaknesses?
Well, the strengths are clearly in the students and our staff. I have had the wonderful opportunity to really be meeting people, trying to build relationships, create trust. Just prior to meeting with you, I was actually touring through 2 of our schools, taking walks through classrooms. Our kids are amazing, they're wonderful, and our staff is very hardworking, very dedicated, so I think that's where our strengths lie. And our Board of Education, very supportive, very focused on the success of our students.
Yeah, and when you were hired, what did the Board of Education charge you with doing? What was it that they wanted you to do that you felt that you could do?
Well, I think that that the board didn't have one specific agenda. I think the board's sense of where the district needed to go was it, or to be in a purposeful direction to increase academic achievement. To create an environment of caring and further that environment that was already here. And so I don't think they had one specific goal in mind, but I think an overall goal to continue to move this wonderful school district forward.
Right. Now, in early November, you had what I feel was a really important meeting for you. You gave an address on school goals, and you emphasized that in the elementary level, a new classroom environment, learner active, technology-infused classroom, or LATIC.
Yes.
Could you explain that? This is on everyone's minds.
Sure. So the creation of the goals actually began during a retreat I had with the Board of Education and our cabinet members, our assistant superintendents, where we talked about all of the positives that the board thought that were in place over the last year, and also some things they had on their mind with regard to ways we might want to look at the district and improve things. And from that, and I came here with the intention, which has been my intention from Mamaroneck to Montville to here, which was really to build upon student engagement, for students to become more immersed in their own learning, for our classrooms to be rigorous, for students to take more responsibility, for our teachers to be in the role of mentors. And so the LATIC program that you mentioned, or this LATIC design, that really is a set of tools that our teachers learn through staff development that enables them to move their classrooms more toward a student engagement model. So that's what LATIC is.
Right. Now,
learner active.
Learner active.
And the technology part is really the tools that the students can then use to increase their learning.
Has this been in effect for a few years now? That's what you
Well, no, not here in White Plains. It has been in various other districts around Westchester County and around the country. But this particular set of tools, this LATIC set of tools, our teachers went through an extensive staff development process, 32 teachers, and they were actually from, I think, 3rd grade up through high school. So we have these teachers in all of our buildings. And again, student engagement has been here in White Plains for a very long time in various degrees. This is a staff development model that helps teachers move further in that direction. So the student engagement has been here, but this LATIC is new.
What do you hear about how it's working so far?
Well, I think it is working. I think the classrooms are exciting places, again, where students are involved and engaged in their own learning. Just the other night at a PTA council meeting, Jessica and myself, we gave a presentation to the parents. There are some concerns because it's new. It's new to students. Sometimes students have been used to a more passive model, I'll call it, where they're sitting kind of back and the teacher's delivering the instruction. Very fact-based kind of instructional methodology. But we know that 21st century skills include much more than just learning facts. We have the internet now, which delivers us a barrage of information. We need students now to be able to problem solve, to be creative, to be able to work collaboratively. This is what businesses are calling for.
And interpret.
And interpret,
make judgments.
analyze, all of those higher level skills.
And what do you do, though, with a child that is perhaps shy, reticent, or not quite ready for certain skills?
There's ways to work with group and teammates, so that perhaps that student is not the one necessarily making the presentation at that moment. A different student is within that group. I think this is a way for kids at an early age to begin to learn those kinds of presentation skills, while they perhaps in a more traditional setting wouldn't have that opportunity.
And when will this be evaluated this year?
Well,
January, February, at the
so
end of the second quarter?
we're continuously evaluating this
I
as our principals and coordinators go into classrooms and observe teachers. This is all part of the observation process. We do what's called learning walks, where we walk through classrooms and see these teachers in action. But keep in mind that this isn't a program. That's important, I think, for everyone to understand. LATIC is not a program. It has a name, and that makes people feel it's a program, but in fact it's not. It's a teaching methodology. It's an approach. A lecture is one way to teach. Small group instruction is one way. Differentiating instruction to meet individual needs is one way. This is yet another tool. And so we're trying to use this to give our teachers more tools to engage students. It's not an actual program.
Right. Our second goal is compliance with Section 154, involving how we provide services to English language learners. And could you explain the challenge this poses for the district?
Yeah, so the change in the Commission's regulation,
Yes.
Part 154, which has to do with English language learners,
Right.
is a significant one. And I guess the best way to summarize it is to say that there are three pieces that are pretty essential to us. The first piece is that when we have the intake for children entering kindergarten, if the parent identifies that English is not their first language, that intake process must be done by a certified individual. So no longer can be done by, let's say, a teaching assistant or a clerical individual. It has to be done with someone with a educational certification. And since it's a process where the individual will be working with families, we think that's probably best done by a bilingual school social worker who can have those conversations. So that's important. And so
Is that okay with the state?
yes.
It is.
So that's a
They don't
requirement.
have to hire a full teacher.
Doesn't have to be a
type.
teacher,
No.
but has to be a certified school social worker, which
Yeah.
is, again, is the certifications that one of the certifications they'd be looking for.
How is this going to affect the district hiring-wise and personnel-wise?
So,
I think it was about 20 they figured you needed last year. I might be wrong on that.
well, no. To do the intake, we actually feel that we can do that with a half-time position, half-time school social
I see.
worker,
Okay.
to do the intake, which begins in around January, February in this district. And so the district wisely, my predecessors budgeted for that position, understanding that this is what it called for. So we're in the process now of hiring this part-time person to do this work.
Yeah.
The second important part is that the parents of the children who have English as who are English language learners, they have a choice about whether or not they want their children to be in a dual language program or in an ENL program. ENL is the new term for ESL. English is a new language, ENL.
Okay.
They've changed that term.
Right.
So parents now have a choice. So right now in our dual language program, we only have a certain number of spaces available. We believe that when parents now have this choice, they're going to far exceed those spaces. So now we're in the process of working with an English language learner task force. And this task force is comprised of many, many people throughout the district. We have parents, we have teachers, we have administrators, we have students. We have the head of Central Hispano has joined us on this committee. So we have a wide variety of stakeholders to try and sort out how we might make more room, because we believe more parents are going to choose the dual language program. So, and then the third component of all of this, I guess I've already covered the third, which is, so parent choice is the second, and the third is that we're probably now going to need more spots in our dual language program.
Right, and here's where the personnel hiring would be affected.
Well, not
And
necessarily,
how many do you think you need?
because
Or might need?
you see, when the dual language program, and this is one of the very nice things about it, doesn't require more staff. It requires different certifications, but not more staff. In other words, we still have the same number of children, same number of teachers. We just need teachers with different certification. We already have some of those teachers in the district who are now teaching regular classes, but in fact have the certification and the language background to teach the dual language program.
So we would be gradually hiring teachers that do have that Spanish language certification.
Over time, we would
Over
probably
time.
have to
Last
move in
couple
that
of years,
direction. Yes,
something
yes.
like that. How much time is the state giving you for compliance with all this?
So, this regulation was supposed to begin this past September.
That's where we
Okay.
got that business about the extra people.
So I would say officially at the moment, we're not in complete compliance. However, White Plains has been a leader in this area. So we already have our dual language programs in place, which many other districts don't and probably now need to. We already have structures in place that will help us move toward the potential of expanding the program. So while we're not 100% in compliance right now, as we begin our intake process for this January, we will be.
All right, and how will parents affected by, whose children might be affected by this, know about this, and what should they do?
So, as our task force has been working very hard, we've had 2 meetings already. We have 2 more lined up this month. Our goal is to have a recommendation before the Board of Education at the January meeting, so that when the materials are sent out to parents, if in fact there's going to be dual language offered, let's say potentially at a 3rd elementary school. Right now we offer it at 2 elementary schools. We're offering it at a 3rd school or something different. That notification will go out. Now remember, this is only affecting incoming kindergarten children.
Right.
The following
But
year,
it's setting them up for more success.
Following year would move to 1st grade and 2nd grade and so on.
I see.
So for the 1st year, it's only going to affect incoming kindergarten
Right.
children.
When will it eventually affect all grades?
Well, it will.
Yes,
Right now,
yes.
our dual language program goes all through the elementary schools and even into the middle school, and now we have some classes at the high school as well. So that's moved up throughout the years.
So we should be watching for this in late January.
Absolutely.
Right.
The January board meeting.
Yes. Now, you are also emphasizing safety in one of your goals, facilities and operations. What do you mean by this? Can we expect physical improvements in security? What are we looking at?
So Fred Seiler is our Assistant
Yes.
Superintendent for Business Operations. I Each one of our assistant superintendents has their own set of goals, so to speak, and Fred chose looking at safety and security as one of those areas. Right now, we're in the process of improving some of our internal camera systems that we have within our schools, so there's that's taking place. We're also emphasizing our safety committees, our district-wide safety committees at each school. I'm on a safety committee as well. We're practicing at our next time we meet some tabletop exercises. I'll be having a meeting with our principals actually and coordinators tomorrow. We're going to be talking about lockdown drills. So while we're not making huge physical changes to our buildings, what we are doing is starting to look at our processes more carefully. The camera system, I think, is important to have those things in place and working well. So a general, I guess, greater emphasis on this area.
Yeah. Do you feel there is a possible need for metal detectors and only 1 or 2 entrances to our schools?
Well, we already have only 1 or 2 entrances open to our schools,
Right.
basically 1. So if you come to any of our schools, only the front door is available to go through. And in most of our schools, there's a buzzer system to even get through that front door or to get through the I guess it's a little small lobby area to get further into the school. You have to be buzzed in. And we do have people who are kind of monitoring that process all of the time. No, not right now. The money for the cameras has already been budgeted. That's been part of the ongoing capital project work that's been taking place, and that was all started way before I got here. So, and again, right now we're not looking at physical improvements to the buildings, but we are looking to be as cautious as possible.
Right. Now, shifting to another goal, and this was one thing that is always we've been reporting on, and that is the assessment quandary. And
Yes.
I wanted to know, since you're coming in from outside, what is your position on how White Plains is doing on the 3rd to 8th grade assessments?
Well, we're not doing well enough. I've shared that with the Board of Education. I've shared that with our Teachers Association leaders and teachers. We need to be doing better. As we do in fact bring many children into our district as kindergarten children who do not have English as their first language, we do know that learning English and learning what we call academic English, so that's a little bit different than just having a conversation. It's really understanding all of the technical terms and scientific terms and all of those things that students need to do well in these subjects. That takes many years to master. And so what we find is that at the younger levels, as our children are first learning to speak English, these test scores are not very high. As our children get through the high school, we have large percentages, very high percentages, who pass our English regents and other regencies and graduate from high school successfully. So it is a process that takes time, but certainly I am not satisfied that we're doing well enough.
Well, there seems to be a lot of, is there a lot of remedial work in high school to patch up the lags, particularly in the ELA?
Yeah, it's not so much remedial work in high school, although there's certainly some.
Yeah.
I think that work is continuously done. And I don't know that for our second language learners it should be even thought of as remedial.
I know remedial is a leftover word from the 50s, which I was familiar with, because that's when I went to school.
Right,
and
right.
So I apologize everybody for using that archaic word.
So no, it's not archaic. I think it does describe, in a sense, some of the work that we do have to do with some of our students who are not grasping some of, let's say, the early reading skills, but I think that what we really have found, and I think this has been documented in the research and so on, is that when our children come to us with a solid background in their native language, So our English-speaking children, when they come to us with a solid background in English, when our Spanish-speaking children come to us with a solid background in Spanish, then the academic future is bright for them.
Which the intake, as part of the ENL program, will certainly point out.
Yes.
And you can adjust as they come in.
Yes.
I see.
The children who have the most difficulty in school, because if you have a solid background in your native language, whether it's Spanish, Portuguese, French, whatever it might be, you have a solid background there, learning English at a young age is relatively easy. And then they fly, they do great from there. But if you don't have a good background in your own language, whether you're English speaking, Spanish speaking, it doesn't matter. You don't have a good background there.
Now I want to turn to something that might be a little bit of a difficult question, and that is in another goal, the subject of adding more college level courses for college credit is going to be looked at. But we did not do as well in the college advanced placement test this year of the students taking it compared to other districts. Do you and the curriculum have concerns about this?
So, I guess
That's the U.S. News World Report that
right.
listed all the high schools.
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts about that. I think one of the goals in any school district is to try to have our students take the most challenging courses that they believe that they can handle. Because if they are being pushed and challenged here at the high school level, the chances of them going to college, and then when they get those kinds of challenging opportunities, they'll be better equipped to take care of it. So one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is to have our students be able to move into these higher level courses, even if they don't necessarily score, let's say, a 4 or a 5 on the AP test. I'd rather them score a 3 or maybe even possibly a 2, and yet be exposed to that higher level challenging curriculum. Then take perhaps the less challenging regular course in that subject. So the other thing we do have is we have some data, and that data is that several years ago there were pretty strong gates, if you will, or criteria that would keep some students out of these AP classes. And so we have records, of course, of a smaller number of students in these AP classes and the percentage of students who did score a 3, 4, or 5. Then some of these gates were kind of taken down, and more students who perhaps didn't have every qualification, but in fact had the desire to be in those classes. And this percentage of students who still scored 3, 4s, and 5s stayed pretty much the same. So even though there was a broader range of students with different achievement levels, because those students had the desire, they kind of rose to the occasion and did well. I mean, if we want to have great, AP test scores, we can say, okay, all of these kids can take those courses, right? Only hand pick the top of the top, and then we'll have wonderful test scores. Those top kids are still going to have wonderful test scores, but by bringing more students in, we're giving them college opportunities.
Yeah. Now, another matter that is looming big is the very small inflation rate the state comptroller's office has been telling cities to expect, and it has been dropping like a rock. I mean, it was 0.75% in July, then it dipped to 0.06, and now it's down to 0.03 as of a couple of weeks ago. Now, this is obviously going to stage a tremendous problem for doing the budget this year. What do you think? Do you think the rate of aid, state aid, which bailed us out last year, and we used the aid to hire more teachers, what do you think?
So I have obviously had conversations with Fred Seiler about this, and tomorrow we're actually having our initial budget meeting, and we'll have all of our administrators together and kick off the budget process. Fred feels we're in very good shape. First of all, we do hope, of course, that we get some additional state aid to make up that difference. On the other hand, I think that Fred budgets wisely, and that he believes that we will be able to accommodate our present staffing, even though we cannot go up to what we would hope to go up to about a 2%, right? We won't be anywhere near that, as you've pointed out. We're going to be almost flat.
Right.
But I believe that our budget can, in fact, absorb the raises, the instructional equipment and supplies and all of those, and keep us in good shape
Are
for
we losing
next
any of
year.
our debt this year? Is that going to help us?
I don't know that. I don't
Okay,
know
so
that.
so at this point, we don't think a 4% property tax increase is in the offing, right?
Absolutely not. We
No.
do not expect that to happen.
You would not, okay.
No, we expect to be able to abide by what the increase, as small as it's going to be,
Yeah.
will give us, and that we are going to be able to maintain our favorable class sizes, our staffing. Fred has been very reassuring about that, and I've been happy to hear that.
Right. Now, how does the school district work with the White Plains Public Library after school programs on content and learning methods?
Okay.
Because I asked that because I recently interviewed the library director, and he brought this subject up.
Right. So I serve as a board of directors member for the White Plains Public Library in my role as superintendent. It's an automatic role I have. So I do go to those meetings, and it was recently at the library gala, which was very nice. So our connection with the library is on a variety of levels. I don't know that it's so much on the instructional level, if you will. We do have, if we have home instruction students, very often our home instructors meet our students at the library, and so those resources are there, and we're very grateful for that. We have a sixth grade program where our sixth graders go to the library and learn all about the different resources. That's when they move to the Edge, which is the teen section, so to speak, of the library, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful public library. And they make sure that at that point they either receive for the first time or renew their library cards. We also have an ambassadors program from the Sinuan group.
Yes.
Sinuan group, yes, which supports a program there for our kids, which has been very, very productive over the last several years. So those are the kinds of connections that we have.
Now, if a parent feels that their child could benefit from these programs, who do they get in touch with? Their teacher at school?
Well, every sixth grader
I see.
is involved in that program.
Okay.
Every sixth grader makes
Okay.
that trip to the library and spends a good part of the day there, getting introduced to the library. So that's automatic. No one has to sign up for that. And in terms of the ambassadors program, that's something they can certainly contact Joe Clarity, the principal at Eastview, and have a conversation about.
Yeah. How steady is our enrollment this year? Do you anticipate the need for a new elementary school shortly, or a new middle school?
No, not
Not at
all.
So you're anticipating that it's going to stay probably around the 7,100 level?
Exactly. Yep.
That's good to hear.
Yes.
Good predicting. Tell us how the dual language program really helps out the new learners.
Okay. So again, we have two approaches to helping our English language learners succeed. As I mentioned earlier, one of those, the parents will now, under the new Commissioner's Regulations, Part 154, they'll get a chance to choose which of these two approaches they'd like to take. One approach is the more traditional English as what was used to be called ESL, English as a second language. Now it's ENL, English as a new language. They can choose that approach, which means their child is in a classroom of mixed children who speak English primarily, and they are often leave the classroom to work with an ENL teacher. The other is a more integrated approach called dual language, where we have in a classroom approximately 11 children who have English as their first language, and 11 children who have Spanish as their first language. And those children are integrated into that classroom. And the next door is a sister classroom, again, 11 and 11. And so you have two classes of 22. And those children every other day spend their day either with the English-speaking teacher or with the Spanish-speaking teacher. The lessons aren't repeated, so the teacher of English is teaching, let's say, the math lesson that day, and the next day when they go to the Spanish-speaking teacher, it's the next lesson. They don't repeat the first lesson. It's the next lesson.
And you recently had a demonstration at a conference. Could you tell us about that? That was very exciting.
So the organization of teachers of speakers of other languages, TESOL is the acronym for it. They held their statewide conference here in White Plains at the Crowne Plaza. Because I'm the superintendent here in White Plains, they invited me to come and be a guest speaker. And I thought, well, I can certainly come and talk about our program, which is wonderful and terrific and exciting. But what better way I could do it was by inviting students. So Lisa Pinero, who's our coordinator of English language learners and world languages, she approached Jerry Lopez, one of our 6th grade Eastview social studies dual language teachers. He found 7 children, it turned out, who were excited about coming, and they were able to come to the Crowne Plaza. They had made a small videotape back in the classroom, and then they spoke to the large audience of educators from all over the state of New York about their experiences in the dual language program. And it was just wonderful to see them. Our children who have English as their first language spoke perfectly in Spanish. Our children who had Spanish as their first language spoke perfectly in English, and they spoke to one another. It was really terrific.
I know. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
It is.
That's what it is all about.
And the other thing I'll say is that, as I've gotten to be in our dual language classrooms and so on, what a wonderful, when people talk about enrichment programs, what a wonderful enrichment program it is for those children to be in those environments and to leave our school district fluent in both English and in Spanish.
Now, you say you are not happy with the assessment scores. You were told the staff to do better. What are we doing?
Well, I think that, when we look at our data, right, none of us should be happy.
No.
We always can do better. And that's my whole premise, right, as an educator, is that we all can be doing better. We all can improve. So we spoke earlier about the student engagement model. The 2 goals that I bring, and in my opening day remarks, I basically said there are 2 things that I bring here, and that is a real desire for us to all improve, right? So teacher effectiveness, we want to all become better, and student engagement. We want to involve students in the work, because then if they're involved, they'll do better. So that's what the premise of my kind of educational focus is. So in terms of the data shows us that we need to be doing better. We don't have enough students who are proficient or highly proficient. We still have students who are struggling. And certainly with our English language learners, we don't expect them to come to this country, to walk into our schools speaking no English, and then to be passing, an assessment a couple of years later. It takes longer, we know that. But we have to keep moving forward. And with the student engagement sense of things in our classroom, I think we stand a better chance to move forward at a greater pace.
Well, Dr. Paul Freed, new superintendent of White Plains Schools, you have been heard. Thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you, John. Good to meet you today.
Yes. Good night for people to be heard.